Andy Burnham has announced he will be reintroducing the £2 bus fare cap after Keir Starmer increased it to £3, a policy that's hard to argue against, and it's part of Burnham's immediate cost of living relief package. Was it Bodger? Is that what we said? Sarah Bodger told her story to the BBC. She said that the cap would save her £500 a year as she travels 4 hours daily on the bus. For some people, this cap will make a huge difference. Yet somehow people are moaning, obviously. Well, we're glad for you. I personally haven't got on a bus for 20 years and I'm a working person. How can I save £500 a year? One fucking person. What about the rest of us who don't travel on buses? Okay, fine, that's just Twitter comments. Yeah, the BBC also published this from a Mark Tate. This is great if you use the bus, but no good for those who drive. Yet again, the working class person is left out. Of course, it's hard to gauge how widespread this sentiment is, but being British, we have a good idea that many people share this, quite frankly, selfish viewpoint. Also, working class people get the bus. It's not just working class people who drive. Now, thankfully, the majority of people do support the policy. A total of 83% of people support a £2 cap, and we can see it's broken down by political parties. 90% of Green voters back it. Looking at Reform, 74% back the policy. Even among Tory voters, you have 77% in support. However, the policy is broken down by age. Not everyone backs it. The only age cohort where the majority oppose the policy is the over 65s. They are also the only age bracket who get a free bus pass. Curtis. I think the biggest thing for me on this story is people being so negative about it. And it's this, like, we talk about this quite a lot, this crab mentality of, well, if I don't get any type of good thing out of it, then why should anybody else? And also, I think it's very narrow-minded of people to say that, oh, look, once again, nothing for drivers, nothing for road users, da 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 da. Well, maybe that's to come. But you got to start somewhere, and Andy Burnham has said he wants to start with £2 bus fare cap. So let's take your thoughts on this story.
We do always have that conversation about crab mentality, and that is so, that permeates British society a lot, doesn't it? The idea that someone else can't get something, or rather, if I haven't got something, I want to make sure that someone else doesn't have it, rather than be happy for that person. I saw a TikTok of, I think the creator is Dr. J. Edwards. I can't remember. He's got long hair. Apologize if I've forgotten your name, but I wanted to amplify what he said because it was really interesting what he said. He said that typically in societies, older people are revered. You respect your elders. But it's a two-way thing because your elders part ways with their wisdom, opportunity, and it's a cyclical thing, right? You know, older people will provide and then you provide for them. And these days, younger people don't really respect their elders for a good reason. And he says, basically, this particular boomer generation is incredibly selfish. And I agree with him. Now, before we get some hate comments from people, I'm not saying that older people by nature are selfish. That's a misunderstanding of my argument. I'm saying this particular generation, the boomer generation, are just selfish. And I can say that because poll after poll after poll proves me right. That poll you just showed, it had the 65s and over, the only age cohort where the majority do not support a £2 cap. There was another poll that said, should, I think it was like 18 to 24-year-olds, should they get free buses? You know, a lot of these people are going to be students or only working part-time. Gives them a bit of relief, right? Because when you get to 24, between 24 and 55, 60, you're working full-time typically, right? So when you're older, you ain't got a lot of money, and when you're younger, you ain't got a lot of money. That makes sense to me. I would like to see free bus passes across the board, but to me, the next step should be, well, I think it should be like 15 to 20, right? Again, every age cohort supported it. The only age cohort who didn't support it were over 65s. And who are the only age cohort who get free bus passes? The over 65s. Now, why do we have this phenomenon? Why do we have basically everyone aged 18 to 64 have pretty good opinions and then 65 above don't? One, because uh, they grew up in the 80s or 70s, and I do think that Thatcherite mindset really got in there. But number two, our economy is so geared towards wealth and asset hoarding that older people who rely on their assets to live are going to have that mindset. Look, working people, we are the ones that pay the taxes. Older people don't. Now, I think there's a people can misconstrue like what a pension means. People seem to think, oh, you pay into the pension pot your entire life and then you take out. It's not how pensions work. It's so frustrating to see that misinformation, right? Pensions, there's no pot for a pension. You pay into it and then you collect it at the, when you retire. Okay, there's no specific pot. Pensions are paid for those who are working. So me and you are currently going to work. Our taxes are going on public services, and they're paying for the pension. Right? You're future loading it. So pensioners who are currently taking the pension, when they were working, they were paying the pension for their elders. That's how it works, right? So if we were to stop paying taxes, all of us, all working age people, stop paying taxes, there would be no pension for older people to claim. So that's really important. So I think we should have policies that geared towards younger people too. I mean, we've got Andy Burnham coming out saying he might increase the tax threshold for pensions, because if you have a state pension, it's close to the threshold where they might start paying taxes. That, along with a triple lock, it's like, what do younger people have? I digress. That's a separate thing because the £2 cap isn't based on age, right? But also, what this says, it says a lot about Keir Starmer. Okay, this is a conservative policy. It's not a left-wing policy. It's not a progressive policy. It's not a Labour policy. The Conservatives brought in the £2 cap on bus fares, and it was Keir Starmer who came in and raised it to £3. And as much as I have exclaimed so much that the Labour Party is rotten to its core and that a change of leader won't fundamentally change the party or our politics, I do want to say that you can see like how priorities have immediately shifted from Keir Starmer to Andy Burnham. Now, Andy, again, I'm not a Labour supporter. Andy Burnham hasn't convinced me to go back to the Labour Party. I'm a Green guy. You know, I'm not a member of any party, so I don't support any political party. But like, I'm mostly aligned with the Greens. Okay, but I do have to say, Andy Burnham in the first couple of days as Prime Minister is doing all the right things. He's hitting the right notes because he's immediately gone to cost of living, but he's also said, look, there's going to be long-term strategies we want to reduce the cost of living, but there's going to be some short-term things that, they're not groundbreaking, but something tangible. And he's done that. He said, I'm going to cut taxes on your bills and I'm going to keep or reintroduce the £2 cap. Again, these don't change everyone's lives. I think the £2 cap will, obviously, that Sarah Bodger, that changed her life quite a lot. But like, tangibly, does that change millions of people's lives? No. But it's good political communication because he's basically saying, look, I'm going to change something right now, and here's me doing it. And you just got to think, why did Keir Starmer not do this? Maybe not on this particular policy, but on other policies. Why did he not come in and day one and say, look, I'm going to change things. I'm not going to be more competent. I'm going to change people's material conditions. I'm going to do this on day one. But Andy Burnham's speech invokes his number 10 speech. He invokes Jeremy Corbyn and said, I'm going to end rough sleeping. Now, whether he does or doesn't, that's another matter. But like, that's very, very good. Now, again, I'm not a fool. I'm not glazing Andy Burnham, saying he's a savior. I do find it quite strange that some people who have supported the Greens have like really jumped on Labour under Andy Burnham. Like, please still be cautious. But I have to give credit where credit is due. The £2 cap, very good policy. Abominable that Keir Starmer, raised it to £3. And Andy Burnham communication style is doing everything that Keir Starmer hasn't done.
Yeah, I think there's lots of positive signs, but I think it's also sensible to be cautious at the minute because, as you said, he's not even a week in yet, but he's making some good kind of positive changes so far. So I guess it's a kind of watch this space.
I mean, he's also still endorsing war crimes by allowing the US to use our bases for the Iran war.
And I also
LFI is littered across the cabinet. Like, there's so many things that's wrong with
and I also suppose the putting the bus fare back to £2, it's not like radical thing.
No,
It's
it's
not the
not
most
radical.
radical thing he could have done. And okay, yeah, it needed to have been done because it needed to be reversed from
Mm,
when Keir Starmer raised it. But it's probably not going to make a huge amount of difference. I mean, obviously for that lady, yes, she said it's going to save her £500 a year. That's an amazing amount.
mm.
It for some it might be less, for some it might be more. But yeah,
But it's tangible bread and butter policies
yeah,
immediately, and
yeah,
that's why it's
exactly.
so good.
It's something that he's said he's going to do, and it's
Yeah.
happened immediately, and that's a positive.
Because he's said many times he wants to end neoliberalism. I don't believe him, by the way. I think he's got a neoliberal cabinet. But ending neoliberalism after 50 years of neoliberalism will take 10, 15, 20 years, right? So, whilst it's a good long term project to have, you do need day to day bread and butter policies. And that is why it's almost an expert move from Andy Burnham. Low bar though,
Mm.
because it was Keir Starmer that increased it to £3. And again, I'm not tempering my expectations, but I'm merely just seeing from a political strategy point of view. Just shows how unbelievably bad Keir Starmer was, and all of us on the left predicted it. We said Keir Starmer was terrible. We could see how awful he was from 2020, I mean, particularly 2021, how bad he was at communicating, and how bad he was at priorities. I mean, Starmer's priority was just
Mm.
basically saying how much of a international statesman he was. I mean, he was just all endless money to Ukraine, and that was he thought that would make him popular. It makes him popular with Germany and Angela Merkel and people around the world. But what about those struggling today? And I think that's something that Andy Burnham gets, which Keir Starmer clearly doesn't. Um, so yeah. Also, in terms of like the selfish response, the person who said like, "Oh well, I drive. That doesn't do anything for me." Typical working class people left out. Working class people get the bus. In
Probably
fact, you're more
more.
likely to get the bus
Yeah.
because you can't afford to rent a car. Again, people have working class embedded in their minds based on vibes, right? It's woke left progressive politics by getting on the bus and being eco-conscious, and it's proper salt of the earth working class when
Mm.
I've got my stupid uh, gas guzzling car. And by the way, I'm not attacking people for those that are driving, because one thing I've criticized people on the left and the Green Party is to not shut out people who drive. And Zach Polanski's been very good about saying, if you eat meat and if you drive petrol, like, you're not unwelcome to the Green
Mm.
Party, because ultimately the problem is the big corporations who are polluting this country, and it's about inequality in people's material conditions, which is still, yeah. So I'm not like attacking drivers, but that I'm attacking that particular person who can't understand that like working class people can drive, but they also get on the bus.
And also, sorry, it's important to acknowledge that buses in this country, generally speaking, are
Mm.
quite pants. Like they
Terrible,
are, public
it's
transport in this
terrible.
country is also really awful. So
Mm.
for a lot of people, the only option actually is for them to have their own car and to transport themselves, because either they live in rural areas that
Yep.
aren't supported by a decent public transport network, or they're just unreliable, expensive, not nice when you're on them either, like not particularly clean, or, and sometimes they're unsafe. And
Mm.
if you need to, be traveling back late at night from places, you kind of don't want to be getting public transport, especially as a woman and things like that.
Yeah,
So
I completely
there's,
understand that,
there's a
but
lot of other reasons why people may and may not get public transport.
we are car mad as a nation,
Yeah.
but that is not. I think that culture comes from exactly what you're saying: terrible public services and terrible transport.
Yeah.
If you live in rural places, you're forced to drive. And even big cities like Bristol have a privatized bus network. They use First Bus, who are abysmal. They have terrible,
Hmm.
terrible buses. They're unclean, they're old, they never turn up, or they're always late. And some routes are not very often, every half an hour, 45 minutes. Other parts of the country have shown where good quality public transport makes a huge difference. Manchester, when Andy Burnham was mayor, he's got a really good the B network, right, the yellow buses. But also Nottingham have a tram system. So you can see how convenient it is. So like I'm so radicalized by like two things, I think. The
Hmm.
things I'm so radicalized by is housing. I want there to be the biggest council house building program we've ever fucking seen. And I want to see the biggest transport network we've ever seen. Every single city has buses, and where they can has trams, and make it that it's more inconvenient to get in your car. Because ultimately,
Yeah.
when you drive to work, you're all angry, pissed off, you're getting angry at everyone else. Road rage is so real. It's
I
expensive.
fully got cut up by someone this morning, and I had some choice words, let me
You had
tell
some
you.
choice words,
I
yeah.
did, yeah.
Unfortunately, they couldn't hear it, so you had to say it to yourself.
I
Yeah.
actually said it to my coworker that I was on the phone to. But yeah.
Right? But we could alleviate your anger if we
Mhm.
had better public transport.
I was gonna say something, but no, I won't. It's fine. Like, let's go to comments.
I'm intrigued.
No, I was just thinking, well, I was just being too personal about my own circumstances in terms of like the job that I do, I travel a lot for work, so I do need a car. I
Mm,
actually can't get the bus to
yeah.
work because
Yeah,
of
you can't
I work
you
in a different
you can't
location. Okay,
eliminate
but I'm just
cars.
I'm
Sure.
going off on a
But
tangent.
I
So,
want us to be like, look at beautiful European towns and cities.
mhm.
Yes, there's cars. Yes, some people have to drive. Yeah, I get it. Like your line of work, you have to drive. I get it.
Yeah.
But for so many people who don't live far off the city, who live in the city,
Well, I
let's have
don't.
a great,
Yeah,
great
I think
public
city
transport network.
centers 100%, but um I also do like the idea of is it walk-in
Absolutely.
cities
Walkable
or
cities.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love it.
100%. Like we live in Leeds. I quite like the fact that we can just go out on a weekend
Mm,
and we've got a lot on our doorstep, whether it's we're walking distance from a supermarket, we can go to a bar or a restaurant or a coffee shop or the shops or whatever it is. I like that, there's a doctor's surgery actually not that far away from us either. And like all those things I think are
mm.
actually very positive. And it also baffles my mind why people think that that's a crazy
Well, the right wing is
policy.
saying that it's communism. It's 15-minute cities. They're trying to control you. It's like, oh my god.
I don't know. But anyway.
Neoliberalism is really rotted people's brains.